it's me, Joshy. And today, we're going to be whispering and rambling about some old CDs that I found. And just showing you and talking a little bit about those. They're all from the early 2000s, and they're all metal. So I would have to guess you've probably heard of maybe, I don't know, you probably haven't heard of most of them unless you've listened to metal or, or into metal at any point in your life. But for me, I grew up on metal pretty much since I was 9 or 10 years old, and it was all I listened to for the longest time. And I, at one point, I guess, was buying CDs, and when the music sharing programs came out, on the internet back when, in the early days of the internet, I definitely downloaded a ton of music from there. So I guess for whatever reason at this point I was buying CDs, but most of the music that I listened to throughout my younger years was illegally downloaded. So, and now there's just, YouTube and Spotify and every kind of streaming service where anytime music comes out, you just stream it for free pretty much. So there's really no reason to buy any CDs or anything. But, for me, if I was to actually support a band, I would, if I was really into the band and really liked them, I would at least, try to buy some of their merchandise or, t-shirts, and definitely go to the concerts and support them that way. But the CDs, I don't know, it was just a weird period, I guess, where I wasn't downloading music, but I was buying the CDs. So let's take a look and see what there is and see if you have heard of it or know anything about it. Yeah, let's go to the first one. Alright, first up, Symphony X. Have you heard of it? Symphony X is what's considered a progressive metal band. And if you've heard of a band called Dream Theater, I'd say they're in the similar style as them. Not as popular, but in my opinion, more enjoyable for me. They, I think, have just better discography. They have better vocalist, in my opinion, and just overall more enjoyable, better songwriting, and definitely highly skilled musicians. So here's the pretty much all bands take photos, but metal bands have the stereotypical metal band photo. Usually a bunch of dudes with long hair, but this is from the year 2000, so it's like 20 years old now, so it's a little dated, but I would say it aged well. I would say, it's still definitely listenable. I would still enjoy listening to it today, and they are still a band. They're still together, and they still make great albums. I think their last album was really good too. So you've never heard of them, check it out. Symphony X, progressive metal band. Alright, next up, HammerFall. HammerFall is a Swedish power metal band. Now, I don't know, are you lost yet between progressive metal and power metal and bands from Sweden? Is it confusing yet? Because the world of metal is very, very versed, and it's a worldwide genre. So, the best metal bands come from all over the world. It's not just like only one country produces metal. It's pretty well versed across the globe. So that makes it, a pretty neat genre, because there's fans of the music in every country. But this is from 2002, and I think it was probably one of the first power metal CDs or albums that I listened to. Power metal, it's probably one of the easier to digest genres of metal. When it comes to metal, there's so many different, you would call them genres or subcategories of the actual style of metal music. So a power metal band is going to be kind of like a almost pop version of what you would consider just heavy metal. So it is a little bit more accessible to people who've never heard or listened to heavy music before. But it can also be very cheesy and over the top and a little silly at times. With the way the vocal styles are, they're very, sometimes high-pitched, sometimes just very, almost obnoxiously, obnoxiously cheesy and exaggerated, and, they try to be, epic and glorious. So sometimes it's hard to take it seriously, but in my opinion, that's part of the fun. It's just about, being silly and having a good time and making catchy songs. If there was any, like I said, this is kind of like pop version of metal. So the songs, they have choruses that are very catchy and get stuck in your head. Although it's still heavy, it's just something that's, like I said, easier to digest. So, power metal. If you've never listened to metal, you could go for that. And also Symphony X, being a progressive metal, it's close to power metal, but I would say it's a lot more technical. So the musicianship of a progressive metal band is going to be kind of a lot more complex and diverse than, these albums of a power metal band. It's more straightforward songwriting where you're kind of just used to what you would hear on the radio kind of stuff. So they're not experimenting as much. So yeah, HammerFall, and same thing, this band is from Sweden, but they've been around for a long time. This is from 2002. I think this was one of their first few albums, maybe their third album. But they're still, I believe, still making music today, so been around for a long time. Alright, next up is Anthrax, which, if there's any band that you have heard of that I'm going to show, is probably this band, Anthrax, because they are one of the quote-unquote big four of thrash metal bands from the United States. Those bands being Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax. And this album is called We Come For You All. It's from 2003, and it's definitely not an album remember. I don't even really remember much of it. I mean, from what I think it was, it's actually probably not as thrashy as what Anthrax is known for. I think this was more kind of just like heavy metal, heavy rock almost style of music. But I guess when I was buying CDs, this is what their latest release was. And if you're gonna listen to Anthrax, I would not say to go listen to this CD, but definitely their earlier stuff from the 80s. But again, another band that still exists today, so yeah. Anthrax. And it's interesting because when I was a kid, I remember there was some stuff in the news about Anthrax, but it wasn't about the band Anthrax, it's about the actual substance or whatever. And I guess people were like something about Anthrax being sent in the mail through like the postal service, and it was like a big thing. So I was always confused. I was like hearing about Anthrax, but it wasn't about the band. But yeah, they are one of the few bands that have gained some mainstream exposure. So you may have heard of them. If not, they're definitely a good thrash metal band. Alright. This band, Iced Earth. Iced Earth. Iced Earth at one point in time was considered for me probably one of, if not my favorite band when I was maybe in middle school. They are a kind of a mixture of thrash, power metal, and this CD of theirs is probably actually my favorite CD. It's their live album from 2000 something. Where is it? Actually 1999, so not even 2000. But it's a 2-disc live album where they basically play, their best songs, at least up to that point in 1999. And the thing about this band is they've had many different singers, many different vocalists throughout their years. And in my opinion, on this album, the live album, the singer was my favorite. So all the material is sung by him, and in my opinion, that's their best lineup. So they are heavily influenced by a band called Iron Maiden, which you may have heard of, one of the most popular metal bands. So they're kind of like a thrashier version of Iron Maiden. But I think that, they're pretty accessible. If you've never listened to metal before, Iced Earth, it worked for me when I was a kid, so definitely check it out if you're into power metal or thrash metal. I mean, if you're into any of that, you've definitely heard of them because they're very popular or well known. Everyone's heard of them. Some of their material has gotten kind of repetitive and not so great. And like I said, they've had a lot of vocal changes. So definitely their earlier stuff was their best stuff, and that's why I think this album was like their peak of all the early albums put into one. So Iced Earth is definitely a pillar of one of all metal bands in my journey of metal. They're one of the big pillars for me of bands that I enjoyed, and of my style of guitar playing when I was younger. So Iced Earth, Alive in Athens, which is in Greece. And they have, so on this album, they do play one of their songs. I believe it is, where is it? Not sure which song it is, but it's like a 20-minute song. So, if you've, oh, Dante's Inferno. Yeah, they have a song called Dante's Inferno, and it's like 20-minute song. It's definitely well worth the listen, but for some people that seems like outrageous. That was for me when I first got into like listening to metal. You know, when you're a kid or when you first get into music, all you know is the radio. And on the radio, every song is like 3 minutes max. You know, so I think the first time I heard a metal song on the radio was like Master of Puppets by Metallica. And, you know, that song has like a kind of an interlude-ish moment in the middle. And the song is pretty long. It's like 6 minutes or 7 minutes, I don't even know. But I was like a kid and I was listening. I was like, oh, this song's really cool. And then it was like 5 or 6 minutes later, you know, the interlude part came, and then they started playing some more of the chorus. And I was like, wait, this is the same song. That was like 5 minutes ago, 6 minutes ago. It was really interesting because I was like, how is this song still going? I didn't understand the concept of a song longer than 3 minutes because the radio had just, you know, kind of programmed you to think like, you know, songs, they just get their little hooks in, they do the little chorus, and then they get out, you know, 3 minutes max. So, metal music, definitely breaking the mold there. There's a lot of bands that have songs that are, you know, 10 minutes long, and 20-minute long song by Iced Earth. So, pretty cool, interesting. If you have the patience, take a listen. It's very cool. Okay, I wanted to show this other Iced Earth CD, which is called Framing Armageddon from 2007. This was after that live album, and this one, here's some of the artwork. So in this one, they have a different vocalist. They actually have the vocalist called, his name is Tim Owens, and he was the singer that replaced Rob Halford in the band Judas Priest. And Judas Priest, you may have heard of. It's a famous heavy metal band from the late 70s and 80s. And what happened was they replaced their singer and hired this guy named Tim Owens, who was a singer in a tribute band or a cover band of Judas Priest. So, there's actually a movie inspired by that story called Rockstar, I think with Mark Wahlberg and Jennifer Aniston, I think. But that movie is based on that story of basically this guy, Tim Owens, becoming the lead singer of a famous band, famous metal band, which in real life is Judas Priest. But he was only the singer for like, I think, a couple albums. But at this moment in time, he was in Iced Earth and was on this album. And it's not, like I said, it's not their best album. And Tim Owens, he's an okay singer. if you like his style, but for Iced Earth, I didn't think he fit as well as Matt Barlow, who was the previous singer from the other album. But yeah. Alright, next up is a band called Kreator with a K. Kreator, Coma of Souls is the name of the CD. This is a thrash metal band from Germany. This is from 2002. I believe this is their best album. They come from, like I said, they come from Germany, which is home of a lot of really good metal bands, and also home of a heavy metal music festival called Wacken. I think the biggest and greatest metal festival in the world, and it's been a dream of mine to go there, and I have yet to go, but one day, hopefully, I'll be able to go and fulfill that dream. Here's their awesome, band photo. So yeah, cool guys with long hair again. Yeah, that's Kreator. It's a good album. I'm not sure about their entire discography. I mean, I know they're a very popular German thrash metal band, and this is definitely their best album. I believe they're probably still a band. I don't know when their last CD came out, but or last album, but this was, this is definitely in the greatest of all time thrash metal albums, for sure. Coma of Souls. Alright, next up, At the Gates. This was called Slaughter of the Soul. It's interesting, the last one was Coma of Souls, and now Slaughter of the Soul, so a lot of bad things happening to your soul, apparently, with these metal albums. But this is from 1995, and this is a Swedish, I guess it would be considered a melodic death metal. This is actually one of the, one of the very first albums that would be considered that in that style of Swedish melodic death metal, which is a very famous genre of metal, and it's a very replicated style that many bands, it's influenced a lot of metal bands throughout all different styles of metal. So this band, At the Gates, I believe at the time, they made this album, and they made a couple other, and then they took a very long time off, but I think they might be back making music again. I'm not too sure, but this is definitely considered like a metal staple or classic because of its impact on that specific genre of music or genre of metal. But so death metal or melodic death metal, it's going to have harsh vocals, which is basically screaming style of vocals or growling, and it's kind of an acquired taste. I'd say it's definitely hard to listen to if you've never listened to it before. I remember when I was first getting into metal, I did not like it at all. It took a while for it to grow on me, and it's not something that most people can listen to right away and appreciate or understand what's going on, but once you get into it and once you understand it, it's pretty good. Like it's so much more than like what you think it is. It's very hard to pull off that vocal style, and there's a lot of technique and vocal skills required to do it. So I wouldn't say, go listen to this if you've never listened to any kind of harsh vocals or death metal before, but if you have, you've probably heard of this. It's a classic. Okay, this one is Judas Priest. So you've probably heard of this band. I was talking about it before. This is the band where the singer from Iced Earth was in for a little bit. He replaced the original singer from this band. This album was originally recorded in 1982. It's called Screaming for Vengeance. It's one of my favorite of theirs. And you've definitely probably heard of some of these before. You've Got Another Thing Coming is a pretty popular song. Pretty mainstream. These songs have made it into like movies and stuff and probably all sorts of different media. Judas Priest is one of the biggest metal bands in the world of all time. And I've seen them once, and it was really awesome. They are definitely one of the grandfathers, you would consider grandfathers of metal. But definitely an album. This is early 80s, so it's nothing too crazy. You can definitely listen to this and not be assaulted. Not have your eardrums assaulted by aggressiveness. It's pretty digestible. Whereas, like I said, it's pretty in the 80s. This was pretty mainstream music, so it was on the radio and everything. So, Judas Priest. Alright, this band is called Amon Amarth, and they are a melodic death metal band. I believe they're from Sweden. Pretty sure. That's where most of melodic death metal comes from. This is from 2002. I believe it's one of their first couple albums. And they've become one of the more mainstream bands, or melodic death metal bands. And they've made a ton of albums and have had a huge success since then, or since this album. This is what they look like, at least back then. But most of their stuff is kind of like Viking or like warrior type themed. And for me, they're decent. I wouldn't say they're a favorite band of mine, but it's easy to listen to. For the style, melodic death metal, it's easy to listen to. They have a very signature sound. The problem for me is, once you've heard one of their albums or some of their songs, you've pretty much heard all of them. They have a pretty good formula, I guess you would say, that they stick to, and if you're into that formula of music, then they're not going to let you down because they stick to it throughout their whole career. I was trying to see, I'm pretty sure they're Swedish. Let me find out. It was If I had to guess, I would say they were. So, Amon, Amarth, Viking melodic death metal. Check it out. Alright, Megadeth. Now, this is another band you probably may have heard of. They've also gained some mainstream success. Obviously one of the biggest thrash metal bands in the world. Next to, the big four, like I said, Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, and Slayer. Now, if you don't know the story of Megadeth or Metallica, the singer from Megadeth and not lead guitarist, but the main guitar, I guess you'd say songwriter, Dave Mustaine, was previously in Metallica, kind of before they started, with their record deals and making records. He was like in an early version of the band, got kicked out, and decided to make his own band called Megadeth, and has done pretty well. Not as well as Metallica, but in my opinion, has made some of the best thrash metal, heavy metal albums of all time, and stayed more consistent with that style of music than Metallica did. Here's a great photo. So this is, that's Dave Mustaine. And this guy, this Marty Friedman, a really, really good guitar player who has the same hair as me, or maybe I have the same hair as him. If I had bangs, I could pull off this look. For sure. I'd have to do a Marty Friedman roleplay if I had bangs like that. But this album, Rust in Peace, it's from 1990. Is, one of the greatest heavy metal or thrash metal albums of all time. Definitely worth a listen if you're into that style. And if you're into that style, you've probably already heard it, so. I've never seen Megadeth or Metallica or Anthrax. I have seen Slayer, but I've never seen any of them in concert. Mainly because they're so big, and most of the shows they play are just like gigantic stadiums, and the seats, obviously to get close seats to them, are ridiculously expensive. And I'm really not a fan of going to those shows and sitting super far away where you can't even see the stage, or you're just like watching it on some kind of screen or something. So that's why I've never seen them. But if I was to see, either Metallica or Megadeth, I'd probably choose Megadeth. Alright, this is an album by a band called Bathory. It's called Hammerheart. And you most likely definitely never heard of this band unless you know about black metal. Black metal originated in Norway, and Bathory was one of the pillars of the foundation of that style of music. And there's a whole crazy mystery with this band and some other bands, and there's a whole crazy things that happened with this scene, this music scene in Norway, with the bands back in this was early 90s, 93. But besides all of the events and things that happened with these bands, this was a good black metal. It still is, it's a good black metal album, but covered in lots of controversy and just crazy stuff that happened. If you're not familiar with that, you can look it up. There's documentaries and stuff about black metal and history of how it came to be and how these bands played a role in that scene. Alright, here's a band called Opeth, which is a band you may have heard of. They're, have kind of reached some mainstream success as well. They are they were a death metal band, or even a progressive death metal band from Sweden. Now they play, I don't even know what you would consider, but it's definitely not death metal or progressive death metal. This album's called Blackwater Park from 2001. Definitely one of their best. And, I would say the style of music that they were making. This is like a masterpiece of what they sounded like in their early days. They're one of the first bands to mix the, death metal vocals, the harsh, growling, screaming types with clean vocals. So it's very unique blend, and also adding like acoustic passages, acoustic guitars. They have seen, huge success in the metal scene, but unfortunately, they've kind of switched gears in the style of music that they make now, and they don't really resemble what they once were. But the beginnings of their discography were groundbreaking and considered masterpieces and greatest of all time records in different lists of top death metal albums, top progressive death metal albums. So they have really long songs too. There's songs in here that are probably like 10 minutes long or so. But the variety of, I guess you would say, musical tones or musical whatever, I don't really know how to describe it, but when you listen to this album, when you listen to these songs, the way the songs are written and played are very epic in a way. They're very like when it comes to progressive metal, that they're always sort of introducing new elements or aspects to the song and constantly changing things, and it's very interesting to listen to and very intricate and well thought out, songwriting, very highly skilled musicians. This photo looks like some kind of band from the 70s, which is interesting because if you listen to any of their new songs or new albums, that's pretty much what they sound like, a band from the 70s, like a rock band. But this was definitely a death metal album, but a unique one because they have a signature sound that, only they can pull off, and they do it extremely well. One of the more accessible death metal bands because of that mixture of clean vocals with the harsh vocals and some of the softer acoustic music mixed in with the heavier, guitarist called Joe Satriani. And if you know anything about guitar, then you've probably heard of Joe Satriani. He's one of the greatest guitar players in the world. And yeah, this is just a compilation of some of his best songs. He started making albums in the 80s. And this came out in 2003, but it has music from all of the albums from the 80s to the 90s. And it's just mostly instrumental. I think it's probably all instrumental, I would say. But very technical. And, I would consider it kind of a metal type of, like 80s metal, but all instrumental and very musical. If you're into guitar playing, you've probably heard of Joe Satriani. If not, check it out. Joe Satriani. Very fun to listen to. Fun guitar style. Very signature sound. Once you hear how he plays, you can kind of, tell that it's him. Once you hear another one of his songs, like, oh yeah, that's a Satriani-ish type of music, It's very, like I said, a signature sound, so. Joe Satriani. Next up is another guitar player, Yngwie Malmsteen, who is a Swedish guitarist who grew to fame in the 80s for his extremely fast and almost classical influenced style of guitar playing. When I was a kid, I knew about Yngwie Malmsteen, and he quickly became my favorite guitar player of all time. And I've seen him live twice, and he's incredibly talented. But if you know anything about Yngwie Malmsteen, he's extremely, I guess, arrogant in a way. He has a big ego about him, and it's kind of one of those 80s rock star type of egos that I guess he just kind of fully embodied, I guess you'd say. But he's an amazing guitar player. This is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite album of him. It's from 1984, Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force. It's extremely dated, I'd say. If you listen to it now, like the drums sound like a drum machine, and just the style of songs are very 80s, but the musicianship and the guitar playing itself is outstanding, and at the time, groundbreaking, I would say. So, Yngwie Malmsteen, one of my guitar heroes for sure, and overall, probably I would say like a metal god in the eyes of most, that listen to like this style of music. A guitar god for sure. He's an arrogant one, but definitely another guy with a signature sound where if you hear what he sounds like, then you can recognize it instantly because it's very, very recognizable, which is, I guess, when it comes to being a world-class guitar player, that's something most of them have. Some kind of signature sound that you go easily recognizable, and you can say, hey, that's so-and-so, stand out from the rest of the crowd. So here's him playing the guitar behind his head, and he obviously is quite a showman. When I saw him live both the times, he definitely puts on a heck of a show, but it definitely embodies that whole over-the-top 80s like hair metal, kind of pompous, egotistical ridiculousness. But definitely talented. If anything, his talent rivals his ego, so check it out. Yngwie Malmsteen. Actually, it's Yngwie J. Malmsteen, as he'll likely correct you if you interview him or he talks about himself. He likes to make sure you get that middle initial in there. Yngwie J. Malmsteen. Swedish guitar player. A lot of good metal and guitar players and musicians come from Sweden. This one's a band called Ensiferum. Ensiferum. They're a band from Finland. This is I guess you would consider a melodic death metal band. And they're a kind of Viking, folk-themed metal band, or melodic death metal band. And here's their band photo, sticking to their gimmick of Viking and folk theme. So, I think this is their first album, but they were kind of one of the first bands to do that mixture of folk and melodic death metal. But it's very good. The guitar playing is top-notch, very technical, high-skilled guitar playing, and interesting mix of metal and folk instruments. Very, I think like this album probably, however, it's probably early 2000s, I don't know exactly, but it doesn't say, but it probably still holds up as far as the quality. You could listen to it today in 2001, 20 years old, but yeah, the music definitely stands up. I believe they still make music. I don't think they've made too many albums, but they've made music throughout the last 20 years for sure. This is just their self-titled album, Ensiferum. Alright, this is gonna be the last one. Overkill. It's a thrash metal band from New Jersey. One of my favorite thrash metal bands. This album was from, I think, 2003. Because that was 2003. They've been making music since the early 80s and still going today. They're one of my favorite bands. Their vocalist is one of my favorites. And just their style in general is very, very heavy, but also, I don't want to say fast. Not fast and heavy, but that's what thrash metal is pretty much. I did see them live once in New Jersey when I was a young teenager, so it was very fun. And they are one of those bands that have never really quit the style of music. They just kept it going. Every time they come out with an album, they try to, make get their best and keep up with their heavy thrash metal sound. So for 20, I guess it'd be almost like 40 years now. They've been, 30 to 40 years of thrash metal goodness. Overkill. Alright, so that was some of the CDs that I had lying around that I thought I would talk about. There's many more, but I just wanted to grab a few and go over them and, kind of feel nostalgic about the CDs that I used to have and used to listen to. Like I haven't listened to any of those CDs in probably, 10 to 15 years, maybe longer. I mean, they're all from the early 2000s, but I probably listened to them up until maybe 2008 or 2009. But, since then, obviously I don't buy CDs anymore, and my musical tastes have definitely, I wouldn't say changed, but I've added on a lot more different styles of music that I listen to. So when I first started, it was a lot of thrash metal and that melodic death metal, and a lot of just good musicianship of the bands, because I was into, I liked to play guitar. So whenever I found someone who, was good at guitar, found a band with a great guitarist, I was very interested in their music and what they were doing, because I was drawn towards it. When I was playing guitar, I was like, well, who's the best guitar player? And when it comes to like skills at guitar, I guess you'd say like guitar chops, your talent, not your talent, but your technique. Like the greatest technical guitar players are mostly metal guitar players. Like metal music is one of the most technically demanding styles of music for, all instruments, guitars, bass, bass guitar, electric guitar, drums, and vocals. Actually, they all require some pretty decent technical skills. So, as a musician, I was kind of drawn towards that style and that musicianship and stuff that they were basically portraying. So, but now I listen to a whole different variety. Listen to everything now. I'm not biased towards anything. I will always love metal, and metal will have a fond place in my heart and in my musical journey. But it's not the only thing I listen to now, and I can appreciate other things. So if you've never listened to metal before, these are all, some of the bands are, some of the greatest bands of all time that I showed you. And if you're interested, you can check them out, or let me know if you, have any interesting metal bands that you used to listen to or still listen to. And yeah, maybe I'll do another video sometime that goes more in depth about my history of music and history of metal and everything about that. So hope you guys enjoyed this one and found it relaxing or something entertaining or informative. It's interesting because metal music and ASMR are kind of, on the opposite spectrums of the intended usage, I guess. You're not gonna really listen to some extreme aggressive music to relax and calm down. And you're not gonna listen to some relaxing and calming ASMR to, get amped up or, feel a rush of energy or something that you would normally get from listening to heavy music. So I think it's good that to have that balance. You know, you can do the relaxing, calming stuff and also enjoy the heavy, aggressive stuff. And find a good balance in between and not just be all one way or all the other way.